How are you? Well, my name is Nick Blanchette, and I have the privilege of doing some MC work today. But before I start, I want to know how many redheads are in the audience. Raise your hands. So it's a dim day. We've got partly cloudy. I've got sunscreen with me. So just find it, okay? I have the honor of introducing Britta Gustafson, who is, cheer. She's originally from LA, and now she lives in my city of San Francisco. So, welcome, Britta.
Hello. Wait, is this working? Yeah, this is working. Yay, wonderful. Hello, everyone. Yes, I am Britta Gustafson, and I am ridiculously lucky to be here because I get to talk about something that okay. I just have to put it down more. That's great. So I get to talk about something that I really ridiculously care a lot about, like to a really weird level, which is the opportunity to use technical writing for public service, which is something that I have been doing since September last year when I joined the government. I'm going to tell you three main things, like three big points to remember. The first one is that the federal government is doing some really interesting things with digital services. And we say digital services because we work on a really broad variety of types of software. This goes from websites that you just look at when you're trying to figure out how to get a passport, to public APIs and open data stuff, to like the back office payroll system that's currently on paper and needs to not be on paper anymore. So digital services with a really broad picture. The second one is that technical writing skills are really, really important here in ways that are surprising and rewarding and strange and wonderful. And I will explain that to you. And the third one is that if you combine this like public service mission with open source software development and really good documentation, you start getting another way into this ideal that we have of the government that we don't think about too much, which is that it's supposed to be of the people, by the people, for the people. And this is a little high concept. I will explain to you what I mean. So, federal government is doing cool stuff. But first, I need to explain a little bit how the federal government works, because it's kind of complicated. I used to work at tech companies, and they usually have stickers with the company logo on them that I could give away. We have a really cool logo. You might see it on your passport if you're an American citizen. It's got a pretty fierce eagle on it. But we don't generally print promotional stickers with the taxpayer money, which is probably fine. Like, there's no free t-shirts. We don't even really get free coffee at work or anything. But that's okay. So just no stickers, sorry. This is the official government org chart. And I love this, because like, who knew the government had an org chart? Like, and this is in the official US government manual, because it has a manual, and you can download the PDF. It's in the public domain. You can just read it if you really want to. And as you'll see, at the very, very top is the Constitution. And you learned this in 5th grade, but as a government employee, this takes on a new, strange meaning, which is that like my boss's 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 boss is a document. Okay. That's cool. And as a government employee, I had to swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. And the Constitution says that you have to swear an oath of allegiance to it if you're a government employee. So I have sworn to uphold and defend a document that explains how stuff is supposed to work. So that's cool. But more specifically, I work for the General Services Administration, which is the most government of government things. It is an independent agency in the executive branch, and it provides services to the rest of the government. So, for example, if you are just part of the judicial branch and you need to build a new courthouse, like, you don't really want to have to figure out how to build a courthouse. Instead, you get GSA to do it. You pay GSA to build you a new courthouse or to renovate your old courthouse. Or you're just some little agency somewhere and you just need to rent some office space for like your 600 employees. You rent it from GSA, like we're the landlord. We have like the car fleet, we got the travel credit card system, we got all this stuff. It's pretty good. And we work on a fee-for-service basis, mostly, where like we'll charge you a little bit of the money that you got from Congress, we'll take it, we'll give you something useful in return, and we more or less break even. That's kind of the point of GSA. But it also provides technology services, because that just kind of turned out to be a thing that government agencies need. And I work in this thing called 18F, which is a technology consulting team within GSA. And we have this funny name, it's supposed to sound a little startup-y. It just means GSA is at the corner of 18th Street and F Street. Like, you know, like, we love GSA, we are part of GSA. We just sound kind of cool and hip. So other agencies can hire us to work with them. And agencies have a lot of options for how to build software. They can hire a private contractor, which is usually what they do, or they can hire their own developers. They can do whatever they want, really. But one of the things they do is they come to us and they hire us, because we offer a few things that are unusual. We focus really hard on human-centered design. We do user research, we do lots of interviews, we do usability testing, we do card sorting, we do journey mapping, we do all the things. We work in an agile and iterative way, because traditional government contracting is more or less, here's a $10 million contract, here's a list of requirements, build the thing, which works much better for buildings than it does for software. So we work with very small contracts and maybe $500,000. And we do it iterative. Yeah, you know what that means. So we also do all of our software as open source in the public domain. So it's free and open source software from the first line of code. So anyone can use it, anyone can look at it, anyone can report bugs on it, or fix it for us if they really want to volunteer for the government. And sometimes people do. It's kind of fun. But the last part is that we are feds. We are federal employees. And I'm not a career employee. Most of us are hired as under this special hiring authority that gives us a 2 to 4 year appointment. But we work for the government. And this means that our goals as a team are the same as the goals of that agency, that we're not trying to overcharge them. We're not trying to pay for a private airplane or something. We just want the government to work better. We want it to work fine. That would be good. And we try to save the government some money so it can do more useful things with its money. And we have a team of about 180 people who do this. So this is developers, designers, product managers, acquisition specialists, because procurement is a big deal, operations people, talent people, all sorts of really cool people. But this is a very, very tiny piece of the government. The government has 2.5 million people in it, and this is a very, very small piece of federal spending on technology, which is tens of billions of dollars a year. We don't have that kind of deal flow. What we do is we try to have a big effect, even though we are a fairly small team. We try to raise the bar for what agencies expect when they work with a contractor. We try to partner with and amplify the efforts of people across government who are already doing really awesome work, but they might be isolated in their agency as the only person who really, really cares about user research. So we kind of go in and they come get us and pull us back and they show their boss look, GSA does it. We can do it too. We help them procure software. We do this thing called RFP ghostwriting, which turns out to be really helpful. We teach people what we know, we blog a lot. We are working on building a couple of platforms that other agencies can use. And we also recruit people into government, like me, who might not have ever considered a government pathway to their life. And then once they get there, they're like, ooh, this is fun. I want to stay here forever. So that's one of the things that 18F does. It worked. It worked on me. There are a lot of other people in government who are working on improving digital services. I don't have to list all of them, but there's the US Digital Service, which is part of the White House, Office of the President. And they're more like the president's commando team of developers. He's like, there's a fire, metaphorically, in the VA, go fix it. Or healthcare.gov is falling over. That's kind of a problem. Go fix it, please. That's kind of how they got started. Healthcare.gov kind of helped encourage some of this stuff along, unsurprisingly. The Office of Management and Budget in the White House does really important work on trying to modernize software policy. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is a fairly young agency that started more or less after the financial crisis, and they do all of their work open source too. They're so cool. They're great. So lots of people are doing good stuff. And technical writing skills are really important here. But first, I kind of have to explain how we work. So I am on the content design team, which has 8 people on it. These are my wonderful, wonderful coworkers. I like them a lot. This is a job title that we borrowed from the United Kingdom Government Digital Service, which is doing really good work over there. The idea is just that government websites have lots of words, just lots and lots of words, all kinds of words, and somebody needs to deal with them. So we are a generalist writer role. We do content strategy, interface copy, documentation, blog posts, information architecture, editing, user research, usability testing, whatever seems to happen with words, we're doing that. The good thing is, with 8 people, you don't need to be a specialist in all of these things. So I kind of bring some of the technical writing background and the open source community and the security writing background. I don't have to be amazing at content strategy because I can just ask my friend Corey for help. And we ask each other for help constantly. It's fun. The way our work works is a lot of it's not just straight up documentation. It's always at this strange intersection of software and law and bureaucracy. And I don't mean bureaucracy in a derogatory way. I mean it in just a very literal way, is that when you have millions of people trying to come together to build a thing, you just have to have some structures and some policies to make it all work. So that affects our job. One of the things I work on is called eRegulations. It's a cool, 90s sounding word. So this was originally built by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's a regulatory agency, which means it maintains regulations. And it wanted its regulations to actually be readable by consumers, because that's part of its mission. So you actually know which regulations the banks are breaking, if you want to. You know, it's cool. And other agencies wanted this. So the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives really, really wants people to read its regulations about how to safely store explosives. These are very important regulations. And a lot of the times, mostly the way they distribute them is in a written paper book that sits on the desk of the compliance person, which is great, but they also they want to try something new. So they hired us to take that open source product from CFPB and adapt it for them. So we did. So I worked on some content. I learned a lot about arms, ammunitions, and implements of war, and gun regulations and stuff, and I wrote these nice little summaries and some related links and try to help you read the regulation. Working in tandem with the regulations guy at ATF, who's awesome. He wants everyone to understand. But we also, after our contract is done, we need to hand it back to ATF to maintain. So I also worked on documentation for them. And the great thing is, this is built on Python and Django, and here's a little read the docs site that we set up, literally. So it shouldn't be too hard to maintain, but we had to do some documentation. So that's what I did as well. I did kind of all the stuff with words on this project. We also worked on just documentation for the project as a whole, because we would like to sell it to more agencies, because it'd be great if everyone was using this. So I put how to theme the software. Then I also wrote how regulations work, because if you're trying to develop for this platform, you're just a random developer. You might not know like all the stuff about regulations. So that kind of had to be part of our documentation too, which is just hilarious. Like document the law, document the code, it's all in there. And it turns out, asking questions, writing precisely, all the stuff that works for technical writing works for this weird intersection of different kinds of systems. Here's another thing I worked on that I am really, really excited about. The Office of Management and Budget, which is way more exciting than it sounds, decided that, hey, open source seems to be working out pretty well for CFPB and 18F, and they hear it's really great, and they did some research, and they were like, this is like a good idea. So they did a draft policy that will eventually be distributed to agencies and say, like, you have to release, at least 20% of your code as open source. You have to share your code with other agencies. Because right now, there's very, very little sharing across agencies. And we worked on this. This was not a normal client project, but we know a lot about this stuff, so we commented on it. And what was kind of fun is they set up like a GitHub site, and they took comments through GitHub. That was kind of fun. But this used my technical writing skill in a way that I never really expected. I had to, understand and evaluate the technical underpinnings of this policy and write very precise bug reports, like literally, like bug reports on what I thought was wrong with the policy and very precise descriptions of what language I thought they should substitute for it. And one of them later told me, like, I wrote some of the most helpful comments because I wrote them kind of with these really precise suggestions. And I was just thinking, like, yeah, that's how you write a bug report. Like, I've been writing bug reports for 10 years. It's not too hard. And, I did things like comment on the documentation requirements. And this sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it made sense, believe me. You don't want to, like, put a lot of requirements in the policy because then you don't have a lot of creativity or flexibility. But this means that not only do I work directly on documentation, I also have a position to help kind of midwife the rest of government into doing open source with good documentation. That's so much fun. So I also write blog posts about our open source work, which uses my technical writing background. I just wrote about, hey, we write a bunch of code. Maybe y'all should use it. We just hadn't really done a lot of work promoting it. So I went through and I read all the readmes and fixed them up a little bit and, hauled somebody over to explain the thing better and wrote some summaries of stuff. And hey, we have some Slack bots. You can totally use them. They're fun. And my coworker, Melody Kramer, helped me a lot with that too. And like the CTO of the US retweeted it. I was like, that's cool. She came by my office once. She doesn't know who I am. She's cool though. And the thing is that like this kind of technical writing doesn't end up just being technical writing. It becomes this like message about how the government belongs to you. Like government work, you paid for it. It should be open source. You should be able to use it for whatever you feel like using it for. I worked on a lot of other stuff. I don't have to explain it all, but it's very government-y and lovely. The idea here is that public service, like user-centered public service, plus open source, like from the first line of code development, plus really good documentation that explains how stuff works. Yeah, it gets to this thing we have, that the government is made by a bunch of people. Like, you can just look at the GitHub commit history, and you're like, well, yeah, there's just a bunch of people in government. It's not some, like, thing way over there. It's by the people. It's for the people. You can, like, in your normal life, if you really want to, you can send a letter to your congressperson and comment on something that they're doing. You are allowed to, there's a system where you can comment on proposed changes to regulations. You can go to your town hall and comment on your local laws. But like right now, if you want to comment on government code, most of the time, like, you can't even see the code. You don't know what you're commenting on. So this is just like bringing like this fundamental underpinning of our software into more matching with the rest of how government works. And this is a little bit my opinion. This is not like 18F's official line. But it is, kind of one of the underlying things that my coworkers and I feel. Software is just part of how government works in a way that the Constitution did not expect, or else it would have said something about it, because it's so important. Like, it can make or break your really big deal federal law about healthcare, Or this other thing I worked on, which is I worked on a little tiny piece of something called the Data Act implementation, which is, we say, well, people should be able to see what the government is spending and be able to analyze that data. And all that data is public right now, but each agency publishes it in a different format and with different schemas, and it's kind of a mess, and it's really hard to compare things. So I worked on a little teeny piece of software supporting this law about software, about spending, which would just have blown everyone's minds back in the day. Anyway, software's important. Y'all already believe that. And I believe you should be able to read the code and propose the changes. I'm fine with there being an exception for scary spy software. That's not the part of government I work on. They can do whatever they want. I'm not going to tell them what to do. But for just completely ordinary stuff, people who are really good at security and want to do some sort of civic volunteering on their weekend should be able to look at it and maybe prevent some horrible, horrible hacking of the Office of Personnel Management, which happened. That was kind of bad. Maybe that shouldn't happen. And yeah, that you should be able to reuse and adapt the work that the public paid for. It belongs to you in a really fundamental way. And this is encoded in our laws, that in the straight up copyright law of the United States, there's a special exception for US government works. That says that copyright does not apply to US government works. We are the, when I am a government employee doing government work on government time, which is this entire presentation and this whole thing I'm doing right now, there's no copyright on it, which is really, really weird, because everything else you do, once you put it in a fixed medium, it is automatically copyrighted around the world. There's this Berne Convention. It's an international copyright law. But government employees and the government does not get to have copyright, because that just wouldn't be fair. So yeah, you can take all these photos and do stuff with them. It's cool. You should. You can go and sell it on the street if you want. I don't care. If you want to try. The point is, it belongs to you. You should do what you feel like with it. And this is also why connecting it to sort of the free and open source software licensing and movement is really important, because that also has this principle that when you contribute something to an open source project, it doesn't quite belong to you anymore. You are contributing it into this commons. So I have a sort of lifetime ambition to bridge more of the free and open source software community and the federal employee community. Because if we got all the federal employees to think of themselves as part of free and open source software, whoa, that would be cool. All of the really beautiful pictures on federal government websites would be clearly marked public domain, please use this, rather than just not mentioning it, and maybe you know or maybe you don't. But work that contractors do for the federal government is not necessarily in the public domain. It's complicated, because contracting law is the most complicated thing. It's fascinating, but I won't try to explain it to you because I don't understand it that well yet. One of the best parts of my job is that I learn a lot about how government works. It's so much fun. So, okay. You should be able to use the stuff. The open source part is really important. But of course, if you just have a bunch of code and it's not documented, or it's poorly documented, or there's no installation instructions, it's not very helpful. It fundamentally needs to be well documented in order to actually serve the public adequately. I don't need to explain this one. You all get this one perfectly fine. And there's a lot of really interesting things that could happen if, this federal source code policy works out really well, and 18F works out really well, and all these efforts work out really well, which is more people might feel like participants in the government, because the government will feel closer to you, because you can just look up the passport website code on GitHub and fix the typo that really bugs you. And then you're like, huh, I just did a thing for the government today. Maybe I should send a letter to my congressperson. Okay. Maybe it wouldn't quite work like that, but at least, it would kind of bring government and the people a little closer together. Makes it a little more human. And the side effect of feeling a little closer to your government is getting more people who have the best skill and talent into the federal workforce. I'm not gonna lie, federal hiring takes forever. It's not always the most fun thing to apply for. There's the paperwork. But if we could get more people who are really, really awesome at their jobs in here, that would be fun. That would be great. And also, we want really, really good people to contract for the government and to make it easier for small businesses and startups and just any random people to go through the bother of signing up for all the paperwork to sell stuff to government. Because government's like a big machine for buying things. It doesn't need to make everything itself. It's really a big machine for buying things. It's great. It's amazing. Yeah. To get there, we need open source. We need good technical writing, obviously. So there's some things you can look up if you feel like it. You can look at our website. It's cool, .gov website. Yay. I still find that fun. I know way more than I ever wanted to know about how the .gov domain works, or domain extension, DNS thing. All of our code is pretty much on GitHub, mostly in the 18F org. If you just look at it, it'll just be a big ol' random collection of stuff. If you want some suggestions on things to contribute to, you can always check out eRegulations. I know a lot about that one. It definitely needs work. It needs content strategy for technical writing work, if that is exciting to you. But yeah, you can also come up to me and I can kind of give you some suggestions. If you're curious about coming and working for us, we have a website that explains how that works. We are not currently hiring for content designers, but maybe a couple years from now, when you're wrapping up your current job, you might just give it a look. Or, a few months, or just keep it in mind. You don't have to rush. And, also check out some of the other people who are doing really, really good work in government. So this is the US Digital Service and the Presidential Innovation Fellows. This is also, I'll tell you a little more about working for government, because that's kind of my thing. When you work for 18F, you can live anywhere in the country, as long as you are either a citizen or a national or a green card. I don't remember all the details, but if you just have ordinary work authorization, you don't have to be a citizen. We have a bunch of British people in our office, it's great. You can be anywhere in the country. We have a bunch of people in Portland. They're cool. US Digital Service, that's usually a shorter term position, and you have to live in DC. Presidential Innovation Fellows is a year-long program, especially for people who are really, really fancy, real expert level. They go and they work on some cool project and they get to say I'm a Presidential Innovation Fellow. I have to tell you my job title. So my role is content designer, but my job title is Innovation Specialist. All of our job titles are Innovation Specialist because bureaucratic reasons just makes it easier if we all have the same job title. So I kind of like it. I went to a college that was called the College of Creative Studies, so I feel I was well prepared for my degree to be an innovation specialist. Anyway, so the point is, you can check this stuff out. You can come talk to me, and yeah, government's fun. That's all.